The newly announced vaccine testing mandate from the Department of Health and Human Services, spearheaded by Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., has ignited a firestorm of concern among medical experts, researchers, and pharmaceutical companies alike. While presented as a consumer safety measure, the requirement that all new vaccines undergo placebo-controlled trials before approval has raised profound ethical, logistical, and scientific objections. It represents a stark departure from long-standing practices in vaccine development, introducing potential delays, increasing costs, and, perhaps most dangerously, threatening public trust in a system that relies on both scientific rigor and timely responsiveness. At the heart of this controversy is the blanket nature of the mandate. The insistence on placebo trials for every new vaccine, without providing a clear definition of what qualifies as new, leaves room for sweeping interpretation. Experts fear that this vagueness could lead to absurd and harmful consequences, including requiring full-scale placebo trials for minor annual updates of flu vaccines or COVID-19 boosters. These seasonal vaccines, which are only slightly modified each year to reflect changing viral strains, have already undergone extensive testing. Repeating placebo-controlled studies every cycle is not only medically unnecessary, but could put lives at risk by delaying access to essential protection during disease outbreaks. From a scientific and public health standpoint, this approach is problematic. Placebo-controlled trials, while valuable in early stages of development, become ethically dubious when effective vaccines already exist. Denying participants access to these proven vaccines in favor of an inert placebo simply to meet regulatory demands violates well-established medical ethics. It exposes individuals to preventable illness in the name of research redundancy. This is why prominent immunologists like Akiko Iwasaki and Stephen Jameson have criticized the rule, warning that such trials are inappropriate when validated alternatives are available. Their concerns are not theoretical. They reflect decades of practical, ethical debate over how best to balance scientific inquiry with patient safety. The financial toll of this policy also cannot be ignored. Vaccine development is already a costly and time-intensive endeavor. According to HHS's own data, later-stage clinical trials can cost tens of millions of dollars, a burden that will only be magnified by the requirement to perform full placebo testing even for iterative vaccine updates. Smaller biotech firms may find these hurdles insurmountable, potentially stifling innovation in an industry that depends on rapid adaptability to emerging health threats. Large pharmaceutical companies, meanwhile, may become more risk-averse, choosing not to invest in certain vaccines at all due to the increased regulatory burden. This unintended chilling effect could ultimately mean fewer new vaccines reaching the market and slower progress in combating diseases that still lack effective immunizations. Compounding the situation is the political tone that colors the policy. Secretary Kennedy's public skepticism of vaccine safety, often at odds with mainstream scientific consensus, cast a shadow over the intentions behind the rule. By implying that current vaccines were not properly tested simply because they did not involve placebo controls, despite abundant double-blind and comparative studies, he risks undermining public trust in vaccines broadly. This type of messaging can fuel misinformation and provide ammunition to anti-vaccine movements that distort facts and prey on uncertainty. When a nation's top health agency feeds into this narrative, the damage to public health literacy and vaccine confidence can be long-lasting and profound. Furthermore, the logistics of implementing this rule are unclear, adding yet another layer of risk. Vaccine manufacturers have reportedly received no clear guidance on which vaccines will fall under the new mandate or how ongoing projects should be adjusted. In the context of a healthcare system still grappling with post-pandemic strain, this level of regulatory opacity is not only inefficient, it is dangerous. Lives depend on clear, consistent policy. Medical researchers and public health officials need actionable guidelines, not ideological dictates wrapped in bureaucratic vagueness. Even if we assume good intentions behind the policy, the practical outcome may be the opposite of what is intended. Instead of improving vaccine safety, it could degrade it by slowing down development, discouraging innovation, and reducing the availability of vaccines in a timely manner. For diseases that evolve quickly, such as influenza or COVID-19, timeliness is not optional. Requiring placebo trials that take months to execute makes it almost impossible to keep up with the virus, meaning people are left unprotected or relying on outdated formulas. This is not theoretical. It is a matter of epidemiological urgency. The pharmaceutical industry, while not without its faults, is united in its opposition to the rule, and not simply for profit motives. There is a consensus among medical professionals that well-established methods, such as immunobridging, comparing immune responses to prior vaccines, are sufficient for evaluating the safety and efficacy of seasonal updates. To demand more without compelling scientific justification not only adds friction to the system, but actively sabotages it. Even respected health analysts, like those at Leerink Partners, have warned investors that this policy introduces a level of uncertainty and risk that could destabilize vaccine production pipelines across the board. In a time when the world faces not fewer, but more infectious disease threats, policies that hinder vaccine innovation and accessibility should be treated with deep suspicion. The Kennedy-backed rule, far from enhancing safety, seems to be a misstep rooted in outdated skepticism and political signaling. The cost, in time, money, and most critically, human health, may be steep. And in public health, where timing is everything, such costs are measured not only in dollars or missed opportunities, but in preventable suffering and loss.